we are going to head now to the UK, to Cornwall, where we're going to connect with our friends at the Eden Project. So the Eden Project is the world's largest captive rainforest. It is absolutely amazing the way that they have rehabilitated this piece of land and built such a beautiful project where the public gets to visit and experience a biome and ecosystem that you couldn't in the UK. And of course, most important of all, is thousands of school students get to visit the Eden Project as well. So let's bring in Tom from backstage. Let's bring in Robbie from backstage. How are we doing today, guys?
Very
good,
well.
thank you. Very good.
Yeah, good.
All right, excellent. Well, Tom, you're going to be our voice in the sky. You're going to walk us through some of this today with a great presentation. Robbie, you're on the ground. You are in the biome. Let's get right into it. I'm going to move you, Robbie, into the first position, so we have you highlighted. And yeah, guys, let's dive into Eden.
Absolutely, great. Thank you, Joe. So welcome to Eden Project, everybody. As Joe said, I am Robbie, and this is Tom. We are live from the largest rainforest in captivity on Earth. So the plan is for this session is we're going to tell you a little bit about the background to Eden, just so you understand where we actually are and what Eden Project is all about. And then we're going to go and have a little bit of a cruise around the biome and look for some really ingenious plant adaptations to the tropical rainforest. So I'm just going to hand over to Tom for a moment, who's just going to give you a little bit of background.
Thanks very much, Robbie. So yeah, absolutely. The site that you can see in front of you right now, this is the Eden Project. This is where Robbie and I are currently talking to you from. I'm in this strange spiky shaped building at the front here, which is called our core building. This is our education centre. So as Joe mentioned, we have tens of thousands of school children coming here each year. This is where they start off before we take them somewhere else onto our site, quite often to these strange bubble shaped buildings you can see in the background, which are our biomes. And the one that Robbie's currently in is the one at the back. This is our rainforest biome. And as Joe said, largest indoor rainforest in the world, over 200 meters wide, 55 meters high, and over 1,000 different species of tropical plants in there. And Robbie's showing you some of those right now. Now, before we jump in more detail and we look at some of those more closely, I'm just going to give you a very brief history of the Eden Project to show you where we've come from to where we are now. So the Eden Project, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago maybe, looked more like this. It was a large hole in the ground, and this was the site of a china clay pit. Well, I can see Robbie showing you one of our rule birds there, getting a nice close-up. I'm sure I'm going to lose your attention now to the rule birds rather than the story of Eden. But yes, this was our site, this china clay pit you can see here. And china clay is all this white material. It's really useful. It's really valuable. It's used in all sorts of products. You can make things out of it like crockery, plates and bowls. It's used in cosmetics. It's used in makeup. So a really useful and really valuable product. But our pit reached the end of its life. We were running out of china clay and we weren't making much money any longer. So it was left. It was abandoned looking like this until a man called Tim Smith came along, stood at the top somewhere, looked inside and decided he wanted to turn this place into a global garden, a garden full of plants from all over the world and for people from all over the world to come and visit. And that's what he did. With the help of lots of friends and large amounts of money, work on the Eden Project began. In this picture here, you can see a lot less of that white china clay that I showed you before, and you can actually see a lot more soil. With the help of scientists from the UK, we had to make 83,000 tons of soil, and we used it to fill our pit, and it enabled us to start growing some plants, both outside and inside our biomes. And this is pretty much what the Eden Project looks like today. A slightly old photo. Some of these trees around the edge have grown a lot since, but pretty much looking like this. Now, we have a mission here at Eden. Everyone who comes to visit us, whether it's a visitor on their holiday out for a day out, or whether it's a child on a school trip, we want them to realise the importance of working together and the importance of looking after nature and living things on our planet, because they do an amazing job of looking after us, and we now need to return the favour. So as I said earlier on, Robbie is currently in the larger of our two biomes, in the rainforest here, and we're going to be looking at some of the amazing plants we have in there very shortly. Right then, so very quickly, most of the plants you'll be seeing in front of us today, they come from the tropical regions of the world that I know we were talking about earlier on. And because they're rainforest plants, tropical rainforest plants, which grow in there. Now, these are the most biodiverse places on the planet. There are over 170,000 different plant species found in tropical rainforests, and millions of species of animal as well. So the rainforest, there's more than 2/3 of the plant species found on Earth actually come from the tropical rainforest, which is quite an incredible stat. And they have 50% of the plant and animal species that are found on land on our planet. Right then, but these plants, they face some challenges. There's lots of challenging conditions that these plants have to live with in the real rainforest. Thankfully, not so much our plants, but they have to deal with things like tropical storms, huge amounts of rainfall, flooding, waterlogging, lightning strikes, high winds, pests and diseases, and also being such biodiverse places, there's a lot of competition for things like light and nutrients as well. So there's lots of challenges these plants have to face. And what Robbie and I are going to do today is we're going to show you some of the adaptations that these plants have to help them cope with these challenging conditions. So with that said, I'm going to hand back over to Robbie, who is going to take us and show us some of our first plants.
Excellent, thank you, Thomas. So at the moment, I'm already going off script. At the moment, I happen to be stood next to the coffee plant, and the reason I want to show you the coffee plant is because it has a fantastic adaptation for dealing with water. In the rainforest, there's massive amounts of torrential rainfall at times, and the leaves in the rainforest, they want to try and shed that water. They don't want that water to be standing on the leaves because the leaf might more be prone to going moldy or getting algae growing on it. So they have these characteristics at the tip of the leaf called a drip tip, which you can see in the palm of my hand then. And what that does is it helps the leaf to channel the water to the center of the leaf when it rains, down the center of the leaf, and drip really efficiently and quickly off the end of the leaf. So that's really an adaptation for getting rid of water and trying to keep your leaf free of debris and mold and algae. And the other thing that I was going to just show you as we happen to be here is some beautiful coffee cherries. So these are coffee cherries, and they are red like this because they are ripe. And if I take one of those coffee cherries, and I'll try and do it in my hand now, I take a coffee cherry and I give it a squish. It might go off at all sorts of different angles, but we'll try. There you go. Out from that coffee cherry, you can see 2 coffee beans. Okay, so that is coffee. That's where coffee comes from. And our coffee plant is a great example of a plant with drip tips. Okay, right. I'm going to cruise down the pathway here. And I'm actually heading to a really large plant here called the traveler's palm. And it's the palm that's in front of me that's kind of fanned out. Hopefully you can see that view there. It's right in front of me. It's kind of the leaves are fan out. Now, this plant is native to Madagascar. And so if you've seen the film Madagascar, if you look in the background, you'll see quite a lot of these traveler's palms. But one of the cool adaptations of this plant is obviously it has these giant leaves to help it to collect lots of sunlight, but it also has flexible stems because rainforest and tropical plants get battered by tropical storms. So the stems need to be strong, but yet flexible. And you can see that this has got an awful lot of flex in it. The other cool thing about them is that in the natural environment, in the wild, the leaves will fan out in an east to west direction, which helps the plant to maximize the amount of sunlight that it can actually absorb. So that's a traveler's palm. It's really impressive, really iconic plant. Okay, right, I'm cruising up through the Oceanic Highlands region of our tropical rainforest biome, and I'm making my way to one of my favorite plants here, which I think Tom might be able to tell you about. Is that possible, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem, Robbie. So I've also put a picture of this up on the screen just so you guys can see it as well, in case Robbie's picture isn't as clear as it could be. But the plant he's showing you is the coco de mer. Now, the coco de mer is native to the Seychelles and actually is a really rare species of plant. It only grows in the Seychelles and it's very rare to find them elsewhere in the world. But we're lucky enough to have one here at Eden. Now, what's amazing about the coco de mer, or at least one of my favorite things about it, is its seed. The coco de mer has the largest seed in the world. And also one of the heaviest seeds in the world. So it's probably this one here in the picture. This one's about the size of my head, but they can grow even bigger. But what's really important about this in terms of adaptations is the leaves that Robbie is showing you. These giant leaves here, they're absolutely huge. They're certainly taller than I am. And they're corrugated. And again, this helps the plant to channel lots of water away from those leaves. So when there's lots of heavy rainfall, the water falls onto the leaf, it goes down those corrugated grooves and moves away. And as Robbie said earlier on, that's really important to make sure that the water doesn't sit stagnant on the leaf doesn't go moldy, and the plant is then able to photosynthesize and produce its own energy. So a really good example of an adaptation. Also, the fact that those leaves are so giant helps them to compete in such a biodiverse area. They can collect lots of sunlight. Again, really important for photosynthesis. So an amazing plant there, and one we're really lucky to have here at the Eden Project.
Excellent, thank you, Tom. I've just making my way actually past the banyan tree, and as we're here, it's quite an interesting one for adaptations. So hopefully you can see this tree. This is the banyan tree. It's a type of a species of fig tree. One of the excellent adaptations that this plant has is it has aerial roots. So they're roots that come down from the branches and they come all the way back down and they go back into the ground. This one hasn't quite got to the ground yet. But it goes back into the ground, and when they finally get back into the ground and they take root, they thicken up and get thicker and thicker and thicker and stronger until eventually they look a little bit like these ones that you can see on the screen now. And that helps to support the branches from below, and it means that the tree can actually spread over a really large area because the branches are supported. Okay, I'm just making my way around the bend here. We're now in the Southeast Asia region of our biome. Oh, and there's some papaya. Hopefully you can see those delicious papaya there. They're super nutritious, very good for treating stomach upsets if you happen to have one. One of my favorite plants in this region of the biome is the taro plant. And I wanted to hopefully show you a little bit of what I like to call magic with the taro plant. So if I can get some water out of my bag, hopefully I can film this plant and Tom will be able to tell you about the taro plant and one of its amazing adaptations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robbie. So, yeah, like Robbie said, this is also one of my favourite plants and one that I always try to make sure I stop at when I've got some water with me in the rainforest and show it to the groups of children that I'm walking around with. So, as you'll see in a second, Robbie is pouring some water onto the leaf of the taro, but you'll see that water is running off really quickly. It's not sitting on the leaf for long, it's kind of running off. And if it does sit on the leaf, it's beading up. It's not actually touching the leaf or absorbing into it. And as soon as the water leaves, that leaf is absolutely dry. It's as if the water never touched it at all. There we go, Robbie rolling it round there. It looks a bit like liquid mercury, doesn't it, rolling around on the leaf? Now, the reason for this, again, is because rainforest plants don't like water sitting on their leaves for too long. They like to stay dry. They like to stay clear of debris and mold, as we've already mentioned, to enable them to photosynthesize. Now, the way that this taro leaf does that is actually it's covered in microscopic, tiny, waxy dots. And those waxy dots stop the water from actually touching the leaf surface, and they keep the water rolling off the top of it. But it's really cool, and it's amazing to see just how fast that water flies off the leaf. How was that, Robbie? All right?
Excellent, thank you. I'm just multitasking, but everything is going relatively swimmingly. How are we doing, Joe? How are we doing for time and that side of things?
Yeah, we're doing great, Robbie. If you want to go for another couple minutes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, we will certainly do that. Okay, well, as we're here, I'm going to show you a plant on the screen here, and I reckon lots of you will recognise it. Tom's given you the name there. It is, of course, the banana plant. And the banana plant is actually one of the world's largest herbs. It's not a tree because it doesn't have a woody stem. The stem of the banana plant is actually just made up of the leaves all wrapped around each other. And as the plant grows, these leaves begin to emerge. But it's really interesting, banana plants, in terms of adaptation. As you can see, it's got these giant leaves, and you can see how big they are, how much capacity they've got for absorbing sunlight. They absorb that sunlight. They use that sunlight to help them with photosynthesis so the plant can make its food. And the other cool thing about the banana plant is that the leaves will actually shred as well. Now, I can't see a shredded leaf right here at the moment, but what will happen is in the storms, when these plants get caught in tropical storms, the leaves themselves will shred towards the center of the leaf. And there's a few in the background over there, perhaps. And that allows the wind to blow through the leaves without actually damaging or snapping the leaf, because what the plant doesn't want to do, it doesn't want to spend all that energy producing leaves that then break in high winds. So that's an adaptation to help to deal with those really strong winds that these plants might get subjected to. Okay, now I'm wondering, as our last plant, perhaps if I make a mad dash, I might be able to make a mad dash to the bamboo, and Tom might be able to tell us about that one really quickly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robbie. So yeah, Robbie is dashing to our giant bamboo. And again, this is one of my favorite plants in the rainforest, partly because of just how quickly this plant can grow. In ideal conditions, it can grow up to 40 centimeters every single day, which is absolutely amazing. Now, giant bamboo is actually a type of grass, but it's also one of the strongest plants in the world. Pound for pound, it's stronger than steel. And as you can see from my photographs here, it's often used for things like scaffolding in countries around the world, particularly in Asian countries. I also love giant bamboo because it has so many different uses. You can use it for building, you can make materials from there. I've got a pair of bamboo socks, which are very cozy. You can eat bamboo as well. You can do all sorts of things with it. So it's a really useful product. However, in terms of adaptations, the reason why we're showing you the giant bamboo is because of its strong and flexible stem. So as Robbie said earlier on, when we were looking at the traveler's palm, plants which grow in tropical regions are often subject to really high winds during tropical storms. And one of the things that helps them to survive is if their stem is tough, it's really strong, but it's also flexible. It can move with the wind. And the giant bamboo is an excellent example of this. For a plant which grows so quickly and can grow so tall, it's able to move with the wind and stop it from being damaged. So a really cool adaptation there for